Thank you so much for joining us, because we do have two really amazing speakers that I'm very, very glad to be able to introduce to all of you. So today with me, I actually have Vikas Garg, who is the CEO and founder of Abillion. The Abillion is a global community on a mission to make sustainability a habit for everyone. So Vikas joined Abillion after a 15-year career in investment banks, hedge funds, and government, the dedicated supporter of education and conservative initiatives around the world, really creating impact day by day. Received multiple awards, right? Credit Suisse Global Citizenship Award, a young leader of the Milken Institute, an advisor to the Good Food Institute, and just recently, this week itself, got awarded the Generation T honoree. And I guess I'll let Vikas maybe share a little bit about what Abillion is.
Thank you, Elin. And just to clarify, I think you said conservative groups, which at least in America, no, I'm not affiliated with any conservative. Conservation, yeah. So just for the record, I think very few people in conservation are actually conservative. But we won't get into politics tonight. But yeah, no, thank you. I started this company right here in Singapore 4 years ago with the idea that sustainability and the planet and Mother Earth and animals and our health, our own health and our own way of communicating, like just people and the ideas around compassion and empathy and the planet were deserving of their own true great platform and social platform and sort of network. And we wanted to create something that helped people through this journey with education and awareness and community. And we wanted to build something that made the journey around sustainability easier for people. So when I say easier, if it feels like a compromise, if it feels like a sacrifice, it's never really going to click. And so we wanted to make the choices that people make wherever they go, anywhere in the world. We wanted to provide them with the best choices. So we built this kind of platform, and today we have users, we have members in 155 countries around the world. We have about 32 or 33 colleagues right here in Singapore. And I'm very proud to be building this sort of global network and global community and digital platform from right here in Singapore. And we have some exciting plans for 2022 that are going to take even many of the things that we do online and bring them offline. And we're going to be doing some pretty fun things beginning right here in Singapore. So excited to share more. Thank you for arranging this event.
Yeah, and maybe tell us a little bit. I mean, one really cool thing about Abillion is that, for every review that's actually posted, $1 gets donated, right? Is that something that you're still doing?
It's something that we plan on doing forever. So when our idea here is that we want to show people, and so many of us, we live in cities, right? We don't have that connection back to the environment, but we want to show people what the impact is of these choices that people make. So we help people find, for example, vegan food at any kind of restaurant around the planet. It could be a steakhouse, it could be a Japanese restaurant, it could be a vegetarian restaurant. But we help people find great vegan food. We help people find products, that are available in stores, food products, ethical fashion, cosmetics. And when you pick something up off the shelf or you order something more sustainable, we want to back that up with this idea is like, look, this purchase can create real impact in the world. And so, when we first started, it's the idea of thinking about how do we build this, because we're building a user-generated content platform, right? And so how do we build this? How do we get people to come? How do we create impact and really make that connection between people's lives, what they do in the digital world, and then to take that back into people's lives and an extension into the environment? How do you do that? So we partnered with, as of today, we started with one farm animal sanctuary in Maui in Hawaii. And today we have nearly 100 partners around the world. So we've built up this coalition of nonprofits around the world who, who are of course also very passionate, and they do everything from educate, put girls in school and teach girls how to read and write, and emerging countries around the world, to putting food on the table for hungry children, to planting trees, to saving animals, to marine life conservation and environmental conservation. So we support all sorts of interesting organizations, and we are now just on the almost there in terms of donating $1 million US since we first started the company. So super excited about that. And I think, I will be the happiest person when one day we are not donating $1 million in 1 year, but we're donating $100 million in 1 year.
That's amazing, Vikas. And to all those who just joined us as well, just to introduce again our speakers today, we have Vikas Garg, who is the CEO and founder of Abillion, and we have Aaron Yeo, who is actually the Director of Operations for Good Meat. I'll get Aaron to also introduce himself shortly, but just so you guys know, we're going to be spending about 45 minutes together. The good thing is that it's a small group, so we're going to be able to open up the opportunity and the floor to you to actually ask any questions that you have regarding sustainability, food tech. Vikas is showing a weird face now when I say anything you want to ask, right? But okay, you really have the opportunity to ask questions to our two speakers today. So just feel free to pop your question in the chat in the time being, and then towards the end, we will actually invite you up to ask your question. So right now, I'm going to introduce Aaron. Aaron's Director of Operations for Good Meat, IndUS, which is a food tech company that believes that the food system begins with breakfast. So they're searching faster and further, along with rural farmers, Michelin-starred chefs, and world-class product developers to find tools in the plant kingdom that will make our food healthier, tastier, and more sustainable. So you guys should definitely check out. There's pictures everywhere around eggs, right? Really looks like eggs, but that's actually plant-based. And prior to his current role, Aaron spent close to 4 years in Silicon Valley, uncovering a lot of new developments, attracting foreign direct investments from agri-tech and life sciences industries. And he spent more than a decade in different government agencies. So welcome, Aaron. And would you like to tell us just a little bit more about Good Meat?
Yeah, thanks, Elin. So you rightly pointed out, I think IndUS, the fundamental mission of IndUS is to change the way we eat, and we believe it starts with breakfast, right? And eggs is fundamentally, the most common staple, regardless of culture, regardless of boundaries. Everybody eats eggs. But within IndUS, previously an R&D program now spun off to become its own brand, is what we call cultured meat. And what it is really is, instead of killing a chicken for chicken meat, you take a biopsy of chicken muscle cells, for example, and you culture it in the same techniques that biopharma industry uses for our therapeutics that we use these days, and you get meat. So the entire idea around it is, can we find or pave a more sustainable way to have meat without even tearing down a forest or taking a life? So that fundamentally, it really is the mission of Good Meat. And we're new, we're young, we are really a startup, and the Singapore entity for us is a startup within a startup.
Okay, great. So thanks so much, because so we have two of you here, one actually creating plant-based alternative protein, another one actually really raising awareness, right, about how can we consume more sustainably. And we're going to dive into that a lot deeper as we go through these questions. But I think the first and foremost is I wanted to kind of set the baseline a little bit, right? When we talk about entrepreneurship, it's always, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? It's not about just coming up with an idea, but it's really, how serious is this problem? Is there really a big need to solve this problem, right? Is this something that is causing so much pain that you actually need a painkiller? Or is this something that, we can live with? So let's talk a little bit about the problems within food sustainability. I think when I look at the problems itself, there's a few things, right? Number one, we don't know what we eat. Number two, we don't know what we should eat. Number three, we don't know how we should eat. Number four, half of the world is obese and the other half is fighting for hunger. And we've seen enough statistics to say that, to know that agricultural activities contribute approximately 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions, mainly due to the use of chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and also animal waste. And transitioning away from an animal-based diet can actually add up to 49% of the global food supply without expanding croplands. And in addition, it will also reduce the consumption of water in some areas, right? So now, sustainability is a wide topic, but I want to again unpack the impact of food consumption on the environment. We can also talk a little bit about, the impact of food consumption on, in terms of social sustainability, in terms of equity. Can I just check, maybe Vikas, you can go first, right? What are currently the key living habits that we all understand and go through that isn't actually sustainable? You're on mute, Vikas.
Where do I start? Okay. So the reality is living in cities, the way that we live. Look, we're all sitting here in Singapore right now. I'm in a room that's had air conditioning on pretty much the entire day. And we're sitting here near the equator. And when you go to a restaurant here or you go to the grocery store, you can buy arugula shipped here from air flown here from Italy. And you can buy dates from Egypt, and you can buy blueberries from Oregon in the United States, and you can buy almonds from California. And all of this stuff gets flown around the world. So right there, I mean, just food, whether, there's so much there's so many decisions we make every single day, completely unconsciously, right? We just go to the grocery store and we just pick things out. And we eat them, right? We buy them, we eat them. Whether or not you're eating animals, like that's a whole other part of it. So just there, right? Like we drink bottled water. I used to go to conferences in the Bahamas because I grew up in New York City and I spent most of my career working in New York City. And so I used to go to the Bahamas, which are these islands in the Caribbean Sea. Right. And the only water that they would serve at the conference was Fiji water, which, if you've seen the Fiji water plastic bottles with water bottled in Fiji. So you've got like water that's being bottled in Fiji, that's being flown to God knows where, then that's being flown or shipped to the Bahamas. So if we can just operate with a little bit more consciousness around where the things we consume actually come from, that would already be such a big deal, right? So, I'm very happy to see a huge trend right here in Singapore, which is like there's stores like The Source and Scoop, where you can go and you can buy things in bulk and without the packaging. And they try to do their best to kind of bring things that are sourced locally, or at least they're bringing them in bulk. So we're starting to see, a consciousness rising amongst consumers. So right there, I mean, that's just one thing, right? Is where is your food coming from? Second is how, is what is our relationship, right, what is our relationship with the rest of sort of the environment and our habitats, right? We're destroying our habitats at an unprecedented rate in this sort of consumption, and we can get into that. I think that's a huge topic for discussion. But one of the most fascinating things about, and really one of the things that led me to doing what I do, right, is this realization that food is the thing that we all do more than anything else. And we make more decisions around food every single day, whether it's what we eat, what we drink, how much of it we eat, every spoonful, who we eat with, it's constantly on our minds without us thinking about it, right? So if there's one thing that you can do to inject some sense of sort of subconsciousness around sustainability, is actually change the way you eat. Because if you change even small changes to the way that you eat, all of a sudden can spark this consciousness around everything else.
I love that. Really starting with, operating with just a little bit more consciousness around the decisions we make daily. Aaron, over to you. So what are the things that we come across in our day-to-day lives that you think is actually not sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge question, and I think Vikas took us through, a number of critical considerations that I fully agree with. I mean, I'm just going to take a smaller point. I think day to day, for example, just think about the amount of food we waste. I mean, not just about the food that we consume, but that we don't consume after purchasing, right? What gets scraped off the plate into the dustbin. And if you look at the amount of waste generated, and the stats are out there, if you look at the amount of waste generated, that in itself is definitely not sustainable. That in itself is expediting to some extent a lot of the issues that we are seeing right now. Shortage of landfills, and the list goes on and how damaging it is to the environment.
Just curious, you talk about food wastage, right? Which I know is actually a big topic in Singapore in particular. Given that you came from Silicon Valley, right? Have you seen, and actually because it's about you were in New York for a lot of your life, most of your life, right? Do you see food wastage being a huge issue in other nations as well?
Absolutely. Food wastage is a huge issue in any developed market. The places where food wastage is not an issue is poor countries, and poor, like generally just poor places. So poor neighborhoods, poor parts of America, you're not going to see as much food wastage. But when you go to the cities, inherently 40% of the food that comes into a city is thrown out.
And there we go again. I mean, we're really facing an issue here where some people have too much food and some people don't have enough food, right? We're talking about accessibility there. Now, Aaron, good. I'm going to switch tack a little bit and talk about a different kind of problem, right? So Good Meat is establishing its Asia manufacturing hub for cultured meat and plant-based egg in Singapore. And you've announced, plans to expand across Asia. Are there specific, whether it's awareness, adoption, or operational challenges, for example, talent challenges that you expect to face?
Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, it's an interesting way to think about it, but the way I look at it, I think it's more of opportunities that we can kind of create. And I see three broad buckets. First, obviously, with cultured meat would be the cost and the economics of it, right? Today, commoditized chicken is so cheap. And as a result, it drives a lot of the consumption habits and dietary habits that we see today. The reality is, if you look at a commodity chicken farm, chicken breast when an adult chicken is so big that they can't even stand up properly when they're fully grown. That creates a huge problem, right? But if you think about it, and the kind of meat that we are trying to create and compete against chicken. So then the big question is, how do we scale up the technology, deliver consistently in taste and quality, such that cultured meat can be on parity from a pricing perspective with commodity chicken. So I think that's going to be one huge opportunity area driving economics, and that's both ways: product roadmap and technology R&D, as well as simply by economies of scale and scaling up of production to drive costs down. Now, the second big bucket I think about is consumer awareness, like you rightly pointed out. Today, I mean, we've just been so socialized that we don't think twice about how essentially meat gets served to us, the process of slaughtering animals. But anybody who has been in America or anywhere else in the world except Singapore, for example, you probably have a greater awareness on how basically animals are treated and slaughtered. And if you think that to be the standard norm, then and you have no qualms about it, then I guess the question really for me is, can we encourage consumers to have a paradigm shift and think about consuming meat out of a lab, right? So the idea is novel. It sounds very out there and science fiction because it's I mean, we are in the now. We're trying to work at it. But if you think about what is the alternative, actually, I mean, I do not think it's that far-fetched of an idea. So I think the next decade or so, in addition to cost, will be around shaping consumers' perception, understanding what consumers think about the taste, the feel, the product, even just the sheer idea of it. And it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be a simple journey. I think it's going to be one that would take decades, in fact. Now, the third final bucket I think about is regulatory awareness and regulatory kind of acceptance. Now, again, cultured meat is not new, but the simple science of culturing cells is derived from the biopharmaceutical industry, right? So today, food food regulators, and rightly so, take a very rigorous approach to reviewing all aspects of the production process, from the cell line through the manufacturing right down to the final output. Singapore has been very forward-looking in that they've literally spent 2 years of their time reviewing the process before giving good meat the regulatory approval. Now, I think in order for cultured meat to take off, to be a global conversation, to be something that where the industry wants it to be, it needs to be also gradually reviewed by other jurisdictions, and gradually, hopefully, in a more optimistic note, approved in many jurisdictions. That way, we can have a more mature conversation about the future of food, the future of meat specifically, right, in our case. So to me, I think it's these three broad buckets, if you will, of challenges or opportunities depending on where you look at it. But these are definitely the things that we examine day in, day out, and try to kind of tackle, if you will.
I love that, Vikas, and we're going to come back to that in a little bit, right? Because I do want to hear from your point of view for our young participants who are joining us here today, right? Which of the three challenges can they tackle, should they tackle, and play a role in? I do want to just take the opportunity to ask you a little bit about that consumer awareness piece, though. Given that we're in Asia, I mean, there's been a lot of conversation around awareness and also adoption, right? Really about it. Do you think it's a generational thing? Is it a culture thing? I've heard a lot about how, for example, when Impossible Meats first came here, it had to be positioned as a premium product. Whereas in the US, you actually have it in a lot of fast food chains, and it's really by far not positioned as a premium product, right? So walk me through a little bit. How do you think, where is the gap in terms of awareness and adoption, especially in terms of where we are located in Asia? Yeah,
no, that's a fascinating question. Let me break it down a bit. I think on first, on first thought, I think, or most people's first reaction is that, there will be a demographic difference, right? Like you rightly pointed out, to some extent that, it'll be a little bit more palatable, appealing to the younger generation. People who are in school now, people who basically have their lives ahead of them and, look at the world as it is today and hope for a better future. But the older generation, if you will, would be a little bit more adverse. But interestingly, I think in our engagements, whether be it formal consumer awareness outreaches or even just simple anecdotal surveys, etc., we also find that the older demographic are increasingly more open, provided they understand the interpretation and the production process of how meat is cultured, right, or cultured meat is derived. And to them, where they come from is, if you look at, I mean, if I go to the market and buy a can of abalone, for example, right, and we have it, every Chinese New Year. What surprised me is most, older people actually feel that, abalone is in today's oceans. They live in polluted oceans. You're not sure the mercury level there, and therefore what picks up into your seafood and then you consume it. When it's processed, you're also not sure about the processing, what additives is added, what preservatives is added. We buy the products today because it's the only option we have to perpetuate and continue, the kind of cultural practices that we have, but there's no options. When, the concept and the idea of cultured meat is disclosed and shared to them, and, you spend a bit more time explaining what it really is and, how you get the product, whether it's meat, seafood, or anything else conceptually, you find that people open up a lot more. They're like, oh, okay, I can kind of understand it. I can, appreciate such a product. Sorry, the phone is ringing. So I will just end up here for a bit and maybe, hand it off to Vikas to weigh in on the plant-based side of things.
Thanks, Aaron. I must say that's a pretty old school ringtone that you have there. I haven't heard that kind of ringtone in a while. Vikas, so yeah, I mean, you've been really at it for a while now. So can we talk a little bit about the key awareness and adoption challenges that we face and you've been facing in creating this sustainable planet? You're on mute.
So, look, I think it's a big question. It's a really big question. Consumers, so we are, when we're, to be really honest, I think that what we have a vision for we have a vision for the way that we see the global sustainability movement shaping up, right? And so if I look at the last 30 years, in the last 30 years, if you had this word sustainability right next to this word, you had fossil fuels. That's what every discussion on sustainability was about. Fossil fuels are the problem, right? Then 5 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was, the United Nations came up with something called the Sustainability Development Goals, and they kind of unboxed this word sustainability, and it's not just about fossil fuels anymore, but there's 17 different sustainability development goals, and that's actually right. They actually did really, really good work there, right? And typically you don't see policymakers and governments, doing anything useful, but like it was a very interesting thing. So this goes from everything from things like water security to clean cities to the equitable distribution of food security around the planet, and nutrition to fair standards, worker practices, to, of course, climate change and resource consumption, just all of it, right? So there's 17 different sustainability development goals, and that's really, really interesting. Now, when I think about sustainability, I'm like, okay, cool. So what are the solutions? Now there's like 17 different things you can look at, and the reality is, even those 17 things, there's the UN's manual on this. Each one of them has like 10 or 20 different items, right? So you can get lost in it. But when I think about what people can do, right? Going back to my comment on governments and policymakers and politicians and all of this, at the end of the day, the folks who are really going to move the needle for the global sustainability movement are the 12 people on this call tonight and all of the other people, right? People. And it's going to be people who make changes, small at first, incremental, and then more and more and more and more, right? Who are going to move the needle in terms of sustainability. So like when we talk about, food, right? When we talk about inequitable distribution of food, there's 1 billion people around the world that are fat. There's 1 billion people around the world that are obese and overweight, right? Who have too much to eat. I'm generalizing. I mean, people are overweight for different reasons, but most overweight and obese people are overweight and obese because of a lack of activity and too much food. Then you've got 1 billion people around the world who are malnourished, who won't have food to eat, right? And so why does that exist, right? That exists because of the way that society is set up. Sure, that's an easy way to think about it, but it also exists for many other reasons. It exists in how food is produced. It exists in what food is produced. It exists in, it's not about, lack of food. Everybody talks about how you need more food. You need to grow more food to feed the planet. The reality is you could feed 10 billion people, an extra 2 billion from where we are today, without, back to your first point, Elin, without any additional carbon, without growing any additional food, if we just don't use food the same way we've been using food, right? So 80% of the corn that's grown in America is fed to animals. 70% of the soy that is grown globally is fed to animals. People like us, the tofu eaters, when you go and eat tofu, only 7% of soy around the world is actually eaten by us in the form of food, right? Eaten by people. So it's remarkable. Now you could just take just the soy, just the grain or the corn that's grown in just 1 or 2 countries, and that can feed all 1 billion malnourished, hungry people around the planet, right? So there's just so much we can do, and there's so much crossover potential. Of course, you also mentioned greenhouse gases, right? And and that's a real problem, right? But again, going back to the largest source of greenhouse gases globally is animal agricultural and all the industries that support that. So, energy consumption, all of this stuff, water resource consumption, land deforestation in this part of the world, people think that deforestation is caused by palm oil, which is true. But the world's largest source of deforestation is cattle, right? So we have a real opportunity in food and changing how we eat, in tackling all of these sustainability goals and problems, right? And finding the solutions. So it's really, really interesting. And in a way, it requires very little effort, but it does require a lot of education, awareness, optionality, making sure that people have a good experience when they do try to make that change, right? It's almost like you gotta like the movement has to make a great first impression over and over and over again. And you know, and so there's a lot of work that needs to be done around consumer awareness, consumer acceptance, and even just the, you know, the way that we talk to a lot of restaurants, for example, right? And, you know, restaurants have green menus or vegetarian menus or vegan menus, and they only give them to people when they actually say, hey, I'm vegetarian. Do you have anything I can eat? It's like, well, if you just put a great vegan option, you know, I always tell restaurants, the best option in house should be the vegan option, right? You make it so good that everybody wants to order it, right? Yeah. And so there's just like
with a chef's hat next to it.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it takes. Yeah, the recommended dish. And what we see now, what's really interesting, that we see, I don't see this as much here in Singapore right now, but a lot of like the fast casual restaurants in the States, what you'll see like an entire menu board when you walk into the restaurant, right? And every single dish is actually 100% plant-based to begin with. And then you can add a protein if you want, right? Or you can add like, you know, chicken, whatever, fish, tofu, or whatever, but you don't have to. It's great if you just get the regular thing, right? So there's a lot of this sort of messaging, and sort of there's a little bit of science and behavioral understanding of how people kind of tick and talk to get us there. And I think that, you know, that consumer awareness and education piece is one of the most important parts of all of this.
Thanks, Vikas. So we kind of talked a little bit about the problems, right? So we talked about shortage in terms of tech R&D talent, in terms of consumer awareness, in terms of driving the pricing and economics of it. I want to now shift tack a little bit to talk about the tech-enabled solutions that we're seeing today. And then to cap it off later on, we'll actually be moving into a little bit more, you know, forward-looking, what kind of trends are there out there that excites you. But let's talk a little bit about tech-enabled solutions, because after all, this is a talk on, you know, tech for food sustainability. So while tech, obviously it comes with, you know, some people does say that it comes with some trade-offs, initial job replacements, you know, change and innovation always comes with trade-offs, right? But we can manage that. So let's talk about the ways that tech is innovating the way we, you know, grow, consume, distribute food. Aaron, I want to move to you, right? First and foremost, how do you think tech assists currently, or can actually assist with food sustainability? How does tech make our food system more sustainable? Can you share some examples, even startups that you've come across as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, again, it's a very big topic, right? So maybe to answer, we zoom in a little bit into a particular team to help, you know, illustrate the point. Maybe I won't use good meat in this particular answer. I will use a startup I came across. It's called Nature Fine, I think, or Nature Fun, depending on how to pronounce it. It's headquartered in Chicago. I think they are really interesting. They are basically a microbial fermentation company that have extracted essentially a microbe from Yellowstone hot spring, and then, you know, found it to be essentially a good source of protein, and because it's thermophilic, it grows in a very harsh environment. When they culture it, you know, it has a very fibrous texture, and, you know, a chewy like a mouthfeel that really mimics chicken or meat or beef in that sense, if you will. And so what they've done is actually they've isolated the microbe, engineered it, you know, and then to you know, instill better characteristics and qualities, and then started culturing. So I think it's a huge, you found the link. It's a huge movement now, and to me it's exciting and promising, because if you think about tech and you know, all the topics that we try to decompact, and you know, Vikas mentioned a lot about the trends, and you know, elaborating on each one of them. I think it's new innovation and solutions like this that are particularly interesting. So I think as we think about, you know, the future of food and what is required from a solution perspective to really make, you know, consumption or just eating a little bit more sustainable, it's going to be more than one solution, right? It's going to be more than, you know, your Impossible and your Beyond plant-based meat. It's going to be more than plant-based egg. It's going to be more than cultured meat. It will take actually a wider suite of solutions, and it's interesting developments or exciting developments like microbial fermentation. And fermentation is centuries old. It's so well understood and so practiced. I mean, the fact that we drink beer so readily and so many flavors of beer, you know, describes humanity's ability to understand microbes as well as fermentation. So newer technology developments, if you will, but you know, leveraging existing you know, processes that we understand so well to create, you know, products that we never knew could exist via that process. To me, is what's really exciting, that will continue to shape and change the way, you know, people think about sustainability, people think about food, and I fully agree, like what Vika said. I think if you look back, you know, just 5 years ago, maybe, or even 10 years ago, the word sustainability is only energy consumption, right? How do you have cleaner energy, renewable energy, and so on and so forth? How you clean the grid. Today, for example, there's just so much more awareness. There's just so much more maturity and understanding. And, you know, as it all percolates down, energies and resources invested into discovering new solutions, right? To your point, Elin. So I, for one, for example, think like Nature Fund is an exciting company. You know, I'm looking forward to see more of such companies popping up. And I think in the coming years, you know, it'll just grow at a rate faster than we ever known before.
Interesting, yeah. And to all those with us, I've actually shared the link in the chat, so do check it out. Vikas, what about you? How do you think tech actually makes our food system more sustainable?
Yeah, well, you know, look, the tech is definitely part of the solution. It's not the only solution. Social change takes time, and there's hacks, and you know, there's things that you can do to enable people, right? So, you know, you look at the kinds of things that, you know, the food companies like Just are doing, right? That are revolutionizing and changing or giving people different options, and then just showing people that, look, you know, like you can choose something that tastes just as good and is delicious and it's nutritious. But you can do that without, you know, sort of create, you know, now that you understand that there's this environmental impact and there's this destruction and of habitats and loss of life, you know, here's the other better option, right? So there's obviously the food tech space is really, really interesting. Tech, like in terms of what we're doing in terms of media and social and in content, is of course extraordinarily valuable, right? Enablers, tech enablement. You know, like YouTube is one of, you know, probably the most interesting technology phenomenons in history in the last 30 or 40 years, right? Because it enables people to create and share content and share ideas in a in a format where anybody can access that content anywhere in the world, right? So media and tech and sort of the social tech side of it obviously plays a really critical role. And, you know, of course, I mean, there's just technology everywhere. There's technological advancement going on everywhere around us in society. And I think that one of the most fascinating things is, like, I think there's, you know, a lot of the time I get a question from people, which is like, well, doesn't any of this matter? Like, if it's all gonna burn down and there are gonna be great floods and, you know, and the polar ice caps are gonna melt anyway in the next 10 years, and, you know, and all the animals are gonna die, and like, who cares? Like, doesn't matter, right? Like, and you know, it's bad. You look at today, you see everything that's happening. It can be frightening for some people. There's even a term for it, which is called climate anxiety. You know, and at the same time, we have to remember that one of the most significant differences between the human species and our relationship with the planet, like the unique thing that we're able to do. Actually, the funny thing, the thing that we're not able to do is live symbiotically with the planet. We're not able to just live in like a chill way with the world. We have to destroy things, but then we have the ability to rebuild them. We have the ability to regenerate them. I read an article in the New York Times a few months back that talked about this white rhinoceros, and there were only like 2 white rhinoceroses left in the world, right? But science is like, you know, through DNA and through science is likely going to be able to bring these animals, bring this entire species back to life, right? Mm-hmm. And so we can destroy things and destroy habitats, but we have this amazing ability to actually, you know, regenerate, recreate things. And I think that, so we just don't know what other technologies are out there waiting for us, right? That are going to be around in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years time, that are going to help tackle many of these problems around climate change, you know, and ensure that, ensure our survival. I think the question though is for us is, knowing these things, what responsibility do we want to take? Do we want to just say, okay, cool, well, somebody's going to take care of this problem for me? Or do we want to be part of the solution?
I really know you brought up Vikas, and I think we're speaking to the right audience here, right? Because these are all, they live in, you know, I mean, we too, we're not that old, but they in particular live on social media, right? And all these new platforms. And I think they then have a much stronger reach and power to actually create that social awareness. So when you talk about using, you know, social media, social tech as an enabler to create more awareness, I think that's something that they definitely can mobilize today, right? In school. With their friends itself. You know, you mentioned something really interesting, right? I think you mentioned this a few times, that in the past, we used to think about sustainability only from the perspective of climate, and then now it's food. Are there other challenges that you see, you know, rising, but may not have gotten as much focus yet, that you think will definitely need to be addressed soon, and that can potentially be solved with technology? Again, you know, whatever technology means. Aaron, maybe you want to go first?
It's not an easy question.
I know, I'm trying to ask you to, you know, look into your crystal ball here.
I mean, I think there's gonna be a lot of things that will have to be tackled, to be honest. I, for one, am hoping, and this is more on a personal capacity than any professional capacity. I, for one, am hoping that, you know, we learn how to recycle waste a lot better. You know, the fact, you know, the concept of recycling is, you know, we've been taught about it since young, but if you actually look at the reality of how much is salvage, no, let alone how much people actually recycle, but once you send it to the recycling bin and recycling center, how much material can actually be salvaged, I think the reality is quite worrying. So, I mean, I, for one, am hoping, for example, as technology advances, you know, you get better techniques, you know, to recycle plastics, for example, you know, take clean wrap. I've heard it's, and I could be wrong with this, but like just your clean wrap that we use so often and so much on a daily basis has more than 5 layers or 7. I don't know what the number of layers of plastic actually is, you know, and of which, you know, even if you recycle them, you can only harvest, you know, or recycle 3 layers or so, and the rest of the maybe 10 layers just go to waste. So I think we've also been living under the pretense that, you know, if you send something to the recycling bin, everything gets repurposed, you know, and all is well and good. But the reality is no, I think we are far from that, right? So I personally hope and feel, you know, I think maybe recycling is an area that if tackled, you know, could go a long way. And then
technology is not the only solution. Technology is actually probably one of, I don't know if technology is the bigger solution than social change, or just consumer awareness and education. You know, the interesting thing is, so for example, with recycling, when I was growing up, I learned about recycling because it was a game, effectively. Like you buy a can of soda, and that was what you actually paid an extra 10 cents. In my state, you paid an extra 10 cents. So if a can of soda was 75 cents, you paid 85 cents, right? Or you buy a 6-pack, that means you pay an extra 60 cents. And the only way you get that money back, if you come back to the grocery store with your big bag of cans at the end of the summer, and you put them in the machine, and then it gives you a little receipt, then you take it to the lady and she gives you like whatever, $4 back or $6, which as a kid was a lot of money, but it taught kids about recycling. So taxation is a very, very powerful instrument that can actually really enforce people's habits. But I just want to take a step back on it really, like, we talk about like plastic, right? And Aaron, thanks for bringing up plastic, because on my mind, anytime somebody brings up plastic, I just ask them, well, do you eat fish? Now, what's the connection? Does anybody know what the connection is?
I watched Seaspiracy on
Okay.
Netflix.
Okay, so I'll tell you, like, yeah, and Seaspiracy, I haven't seen Seaspiracy yet, because I just don't need, I don't need to watch another animal snuff film, but if anyone's interested in animal snuff films, watch Earthlings from 2005. If you threw all of the plastic straws in the world today into the ocean, you would get like a tiny fraction. It's something like 0.02%. That's 2/100ths of 1%. That's 2% of 1% of all the plastic in the ocean. That's if you took all the straws and you threw them in the ocean right now. So it's nothing, right? But 70% of plastic in the ocean comes from the fishing industry. So when I go to beaches, when I used to go to beaches, when you travel and you see people picking up like little plastic bags and little things on the beach, and then you see the same people sitting there at lunch eating fish. You're like, oh, you were picking up the plastic, and they're like, yeah, we're just save the oceans, don't use a plastic bag. And I'm like, man, if you want to save the oceans and the stuff that's inside the oceans, then don't put it on your plate. Right. And so like there's just simple stuff like that. And I think that films like Seaspiracy and media are a tremendous force. There's no technology, right? It's just film, right? But like media and has a tremendous and transformative effect on people's perceptions. I can tell you after Seaspiracy came out, I had dinner with 2 or 3 or 4 couples, and the girlfriends and the wives, all who had seen the film, were just like, I can never eat fish again. So and these are like these are Aussies and Singaporeans and Americans, and it's fascinating. It doesn't, all the technology, all the like all the plant-based options and all of this stuff that's out there, it doesn't click sometimes or register with people, because people don't necessarily perceive it as clean, as unprocessed, as fresh, as like, they think, they don't realize all the stuff that needs to happen to meat and fish to get to the plate either, right? They're very naive about that, but they also think that all those other products are made in a factory, right? All the plant-based, so they don't necessarily equate that with, but when they finally see what's actually really happening to get the food that they do eat, you see that change, you see that transformation. So I think it's a confluence of many different factors, and I think that one of the most powerful inventions of the last 20 years has been social media, because it, for good and bad. Obviously there's a lot of bad that's come out of social media, Donald Trump, for example, but like overall, it's just been a tremendous force for social change, around the world. And I think that we're going to continue to see, with technological like advancements in social, that just continue to accelerate, right? People's ability to communicate and see and gain perspective on what's happening in another part of the world live, and maybe even change or do something about it. is going to grow.
Okay, so now that we're in the final leg itself, I want to again bring it back to our participants who are young students, right? Now, as a student, we've covered a lot of grounds today, from all the way from deep food tech itself to really social media, which to a lot of people might not even be tech, to really non-tech at all, right? So like you said, film. As a student, what is a skill or study that you would suggest you actually pick up in order to be able to build and create solutions that will, generate environmental and social sustainability? So because I know, for example, you were a hedge fund manager, and then you started Abillion by joining a 3-month coding bootcamp. Was that right? What would you advise, all our listeners to actually do? How do they get started? What kind of skills should they pick up?
So look, I think you guys are all pretty young. And what I would say, look, if you've got like an idea, if you've got something that you're really passionate about, think about how you can test it in the market. Just think about what you can build to kind of test your idea, and then what do you need to get there, right? I will encourage anybody to I would say don't necessarily rush in either into becoming an entrepreneur. It sounds really great and romantic and like and all this stuff, but it's a huge amount of responsibility and dedication, and having to just juggle a lot of pieces all at the same time. And it actually, like, where you could potentially really benefit in the first few years coming out of school is to actually have a lot of structure, and do something where you gain a deeper fundamental understanding of something. So, a lot of people are kind of like, knock sort of more traditional jobs. I'd encourage all of you guys, pick your, best thing you can do is make sure you pick your boss. That's like the one thing you could do, is pick your boss and wisely try to really think through what it is that you want in a boss. What are the qualities that you want, and really understand who you're going to be working for. Make sure you respect that person, and make sure that if you can go and work for somebody who's actually achieved a lot in their life, then that will already help you tremendously in the early stages of your career.
Does Abillion take interns?
I started my career. My first internship was when I was 14, and I just did not want to be in the house in the summertime, and I wanted to make money so I could have fun. And so I started working when I was really, really young. So it's always been a really big part of our company. It's been a big part of every company that I've ever worked with and built internship programs. And I owe a lot of my success, in the early years of my life, to the opportunities that I had when I was an intern, or that I created when I was an intern. And I encourage all of you guys to do the same thing. We have probably had, it's been 4 years since we started the company. We've probably had 60 or 70 or 80 interns from local universities. We've had secondary school students who are awesome. We've had software engineers who are 15 and 16 years old, who have gone on to Harvard and Duke and Cornell and Yale. We've had university students from all of those places, and IndUS and NTU and some of the polys. We love interns. So at the current, we are always hiring interns throughout the course of the year. And we have a super active internship program. So whether you're interested in social media, or you're interested in if you have creative skills, videography skills, animation skills, if you are a software engineer, a computer programmer, or have the basics down and are looking to really accelerate or build your portfolio, or if you think if you're a designer and you like creating games, or you just want to work in an office and do stuff, please reach out. My email is vikas@abillion.com. And we're always hiring interns, and I think so we have 33 or 34 full-time staff in the company, and I would say 1/3 of them, like 10 of them, started at Abillion as interns. So we also bring our interns on board full-time. It's not just slave labor to me.
And I think the skills that you mentioned, that are needed are really relevant to our audience. Aaron, what about you? I know earlier, going back to what you said earlier on as well, right? You mentioned about tech R&D, about driving the economics, right? So for students here, and quite honestly, I think in Singapore, generally, people have always said that there isn't enough deep tech skill, enough food scientists here. What are your thoughts around that as a student? Now, I'm not advising you to, give them ideas too early on. Definitely don't, early foreclose on a particular skill set. But what are your thoughts around, what kind of skill study that they can pick up?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. As I think about, talent of the future, the way I think about it is that the future of work will require multidisciplinary talent. So basically, people with skill sets from all different professions coming together to hack at a solution, right? To hack at a problem. So, by virtue of that, I think really my one simple advice is, at this young age, if you're pursuing your interests, go ahead and just continue finding out what really interests you. Spend some time figuring out, read broadly, talk to different people. But when you find, I think, that area that you're interested in, it's also important to try and go deep. Right. So I think that's just my broad candid advice. So I think about it, for example, in my company right now in Good Meat, we have variety of different talent. We have, cell culturists, we have, food scientists, chefs, brand ambassadors, and business development folks, for example, all coming under one roof to work at this one single solution. So, but there's need for each of us to flex so we understand a different discipline, but at the same time, each individual is a master and a subject matter expert of its own discipline. So, breadth as well as depth matters. But as at this young age, I think, just enjoy education. I think the most important thing is just, figure out what you like, what you want, and then just go and pursue it.
I love that. Thank you so much. And we've actually come to kind of the end. I'm just going to ask, if anyone still in the audience who has a burning question they want to ask Aaron or Vikas, please raise your hand or, give us a note in the chat. But in the meantime, today we covered quite a lot of grounds. I think we covered the different kind of challenges from tech R&D to pricing to awareness. We talk about how tech can actually solve for sustainability. Deep tech to low tech, social media to no tech at all. And all those, we actually need all of those solutions combined to actually make this shift in terms of how we are consuming and distributing food. And then we also kind of briefly touch upon not just food sustainability, but the 17 SDGs, right? Everything contributes to sustainability from human, social, economic, food, environmental sustainability. So definitely covered a lot of grounds today. And I want to thank again Vikas Garg, founder and CEO of Abillion, as well as Aaron Yeo, Director of Operations at Good Meat. Thank you to both of you and to all of you who are with us here today. My name is Elin Lim. I am the co-founder and CEO of Smarter Me and host of Young Founders Summit. And I definitely hope to see your submissions in Young Founders Summit. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks so much again, Vikas and Aaron. You guys were great.
No, you're welcome. It's a great. Thank you for moderating it.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.